This week on LTC News, a daytime haven for homeless youth.
CTI has taken on this initiative because it's a growing need across the city, but not only in Lowell, it's also across the state of Massachusetts and the nation.
The history of Greek immigrants in Lowell.
We take a look at Greeks coming into the city by 1910, 1915 or so. Lowell had the third largest Greek population in the United States.
And the annual City of Lights Parade.
Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
All this and much more on this edition of LTC News. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your host, Krista Brown. Lowell kicked off the holiday season with the City of Lights, including the city's only nighttime parade. It featured local marching bands, holiday-themed floats, dazzling dance, and performance groups.
The hall with jingle bells, on a one-horse open sleigh. Deck the hall with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Droll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la. The snow, the sleigh, we go all the way home. Ring, 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 so bright, fun to sing a song tonight. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Deck the hall with boughs of holly, la 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 la. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyful strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo, excelsis Deo. Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why their joyful strains prolong?
And welcome everybody to the City of Lights Parade. Didn't we have a great parade? The floats, the bands. How good were they, huh? Absolutely. So we're here to have a good time, and how lucky I am because I'm up here with Santa getting ready to turn the lights on. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming out in this cold weather to start our festivities. I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you. All right, just before we'll ask Santa to take one side here of this giant lever, which is going to turn on the lights. But they're going to need a little bit of help. We need to come backwards from 10. And then I hope everyone paid the electric bill. All right, so let's have all of you out there in the crowd start counting backwards from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You can see a full version of the festivities on LTC channels 8 and 99. Community Teamwork has just completed the build-out of the milieu space at 167 Dutton Street, a comfy place for homeless youth to spend time, eat a meal, and access city services.
CTI has taken on this initiative because it's a growing need across the city, but not only in Lowell, it's also across the state of Massachusetts and the nation. And so over the last several years, we've been really formulating a plan to figure out how we can solve this problem as a city. And so we're noticing that a lot of these youth and young adults are accessing our city shelter, or they're sleeping outside, or they're sleeping in cars. And so we want to be very mindful of figuring out how we can intervene early enough so that they feel safe and connected, and then as they grow into adulthood, they're able to kind of flourish. Since last January, we've seen upwards of about 170 to 175 youth. And that number is kind of the whole gamut. So that's not just people that are staying in shelters or sleeping outside, but those are young folks who are, couch surfing or not connected in some way. And so that number is, over the past year, that's a pretty substantial number. And I would say on average, we probably get between 5 to 7 referrals a week. We have many partners across the city. We work very closely with JRI through Youth Harbors. So they're located in the high school working with homeless and at-risk students, specifically at the high school, to make sure that anyone who's accessing those services at the high school is connected with us. We work with Lowell Transitional Living Center so that we can make sure that any person that's coming into shelter is connected with us. It's fitting in our age range. We do work with Lowell Community Health Center, UMass Lowell, and Middlesex Community College. So we do have a program, our college engagement program, which allows homeless students who are going to school full-time to get free housing. And so there's only 5 beds that are available for that program, but that is a pilot that's brought to us by the state. This space, the milieu, it's kind of just like an area where young people can come in, hang out, feel safe, get out of the cold for a little while, have access to case management and community supports. So they'll come in, they'll meet with our intake case manager, get a generalized assessment completed, which is a basic mental health assessment, substance use screening, which is just a series of questions. So it's just a questionnaire. What happens after that point is that then they'll have access to this space. But they should be working towards something. So throughout the work that they would be doing with our case management, they're developing an individualized service plan or other things that we can help support them in so that they're not going to, this is a small stop along the way.
We don't serve meals, but we provide a space for the youth to come and receive food. So we're in the process right now of turning this space, as well as our youth build space on the 2nd floor, into a food pantry for youth specifically. So youth can come here when we're open, get a warm meal, a cold meal, and help and basically feed themselves, but we'll be here to help them walk through and also just teach basic living skills like how to prepare a meal, how to cook, while we're engaging in case management services.
We have full shower and full laundry, so anyone who comes in who's in need has access to those services as well. Say they have a job interview or they have to go to school or something's going on and they need that extra support. We had our first youth advisory board here last Wednesday, and they walked in and they were just completely blown away. And they were just floored that this was a resource that they could tap into. So everyone's very excited and happy, and you can't ask for anything more than that.
Funding for the project came from the State Executive Office of Health and Human Services, HUD funds, the Smith Family Foundation, and the Parker Foundation. For more information, visit the CTI website and search for youth services. The Greek community is one of the oldest immigrant groups in Lowell, dating back to the late 1800s during the rise of industrialized America. To honor their legacy, UMass Lowell put together an exhibit chronicling their history. And in this next segment, we'll check it out.
The exhibit covers the history of Greek immigration into Lowell, Massachusetts from the late 19th century right up until today. The focus really is historical. We take a look at Greeks coming into the city by 1910, 1915 or so. Lowell had the 3rd largest Greek population in the United States. So we've taken a look at urban renewal, at businesses, business startups, the role of Greeks in art, culture, entertainment, and really tried to, as best we can, using oral histories, images that most people might not have looked at before, cover in as in-depth a way as we can on 9 exhibit panels. Just this incredible immigration story and powerful story in the city of Lowell. I think that when people come to Lowell, this typical story you get is of the mills and of industry, and oftentimes you don't make the connection necessarily that the workforce in the mills was largely an immigrant workforce. By 1910, again, 1920, 70% of all the mill workers in Lowell were either first generation or second generation immigrants or the kids of immigrants. This was an immigrant city. The economy, the industry, everything about it sort of derived from the fact that Lowell was this place that was expanding economically and was basically a global magnet for people coming into the city. And you can't really understand Lowell without understanding that very intricate immigration history, that story of people from around the world ending up in Lowell at one point or another.
Professor Ferrant contacted me over the summer, and I worked doing interviews with 7 different people, one of which was the painter who's responsible for this painting right here, Charles Zografos. And in addition to that, I worked through archives at the Center for Lowell History, looking at oral histories, photographs, all sorts of documents. And then after that, this fall, I did a lot of the writing for the text in this exhibit. I found a bunch of the photographs and tried to assemble them in a way that made sense and could communicate the right ideas to the public. We started about May, and it ended probably October when we had to get everything in under the deadline. So it was about 6 months.
It is leaving UMass Lowell on the 13th of December, at which point it's up for grabs if anybody wants to have it in their school or for a cultural event that the Greek community might be having. Basically, it will be housed in the advancement office of the university. It's the property of the university, and simply viewers, if they're interested in getting it, can contact the advancement office at UMass Lowell and ask for the exhibit to show up at their place. It's very portable, easily movable, and we designed it in such a way that we want it to be out and about as much as possible.
The Lowell Art Association is the oldest incorporated art association in the country. An exhibit of works by its members is now up at the Whistler House Museum of Art at 243 Worthen Street. This juried show features works of many styles, from traditional to contemporary, painting to sculpture, and everything in between.
The exhibition itself this year, we had over 250 to 260 paintings that were submitted by all different artists from our organization. We selected over 100 different paintings in the collection, and it's a variety of all different types of artists. There's over 100 works of art in the exhibition from about 90 different artists throughout New England. It's just not Lowell, it's throughout New England. So we have a great cross-section and diversity of artist membership.
And I was asked to jury this exhibition. It's actually a lot of fun to do a members exhibition. This particular exhibition started with digital images, so all of the artists had to send a digital image, and that was where the initial jurying started. These kinds of exhibitions are always really exciting because it's really an opportunity for the members to be able to show their work. So you want to get as many of them in as you possibly can, and yet you also want to maintain the quality. So there were technical elements that I was looking at when I was going through the review. Also, the subject comes into play. So the technical elements, the subject, are they dealing with the subject in an original manner, something I haven't seen before, or are they doing a traditional subject and they're doing it really well? And then there are others where I look at the materials. You'll notice when you come into the exhibition that there is painting, there is drawing, there's different types of painting. There's oil painting and acrylic painting. There are some quilts, there are some sculptures. This received an honorable mention. Very interesting, because there's nothing like this in the show. There's nothing like this No one entered anything like this. Because when you look at it, you think maybe it's just a model, a wooden model, but it's actually made out of clay. And that's what's really interesting, that he's given it texture. There's texture here that makes it look like there's grains of wood, just the way that you would have a boat that's been washed up on the beach and has been smacked by the elements. Good art is like good poetry, right? When you read a poem, people are used to doing this with poems. You read it once and you kind of get the language, you understand what it's talking about. You usually read it at least a second time, and that's when you get like a metaphor and you get a deeper meaning. And that's really the way good art should work for you. That you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a scene of a bridge. And then you look at it more and you're like, wow, isn't that interesting the way that they've dealt with the bridge? Or you think, wow, maybe that bridge is a metaphor for life or something like that.
This particular exhibition that runs from November to January is open as far as theme goes, but it's particularly done this time of year to bring the community together, to bring people to the Whistler House, not only to see the exhibition itself, but to walk through the Whistler House that we have decorated for Christmas, and to educate the community on the type of artwork and artists that we have as part of this wonderful community in Lowell.
The exhibit is up until January 25th. You can check the Whistler House website for more details. In this week's Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Lowell Police Department Superintendent Raymond Richardson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise Editor at The Sun, with another edition of Sunspot. I'd like to welcome in today Kelly Richardson, the Lowell Police Superintendent. Kelly, thank you for coming in. This is your second appearance on Sunspot.
Yes,
You must have liked the first one so much that you couldn't resist coming back, right?
I come running back.
Running back. Well, actually, you did run to Dutton Street first.
I did, yeah, because I forgot about the first one. Yeah.
We're talking a little bit off air about some stories that have been in the newspaper over the past several weeks, and we can hit each one. We had a story about a big federal bust of the Latin Kings in New Bedford and Springfield. And there were a couple of guys from Lowell who were caught up in that bust. Could you just touch base a little bit on gangs in the city? Or are there gangs in the city like that?
Well, obviously
like
there are.
Latin
I mean,
King
there was a small Latin King group here in Lowell, but you know, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney General's office is committed to helping us with any gang issues we have. And you know, we had Joe Bellavanta from the FBI come in to visit me when I first started, and then Andrew Yellen, the U.S. Attorney General for Massachusetts. And it's a great partnership, and that was a great case. I know it stemmed mostly from down the New Bedford area, but it goes to show you how the tentacles are pretty far. They even have a couple of people up here in Lowell.
Yeah,
and, the names look familiar to me. Even
Did they?
I've been out of the game for a little bit. I mean, being upstairs, but I knew some of the names, so they've been around.
When you say there's a little bit of influence here, nothing like in Springfield or New Bedford?
No, we're not seeing that. I mean, yeah, we do have gangs here, but I wouldn't consider the Latin Kings to be the largest of the group. But they are around.
Shots fired downtown. I think it was the previous weekend. I know that law and order downtown, not only downtown, but across the city, has been a big priority of yours. There was the facility opened in the old Mass Bank. You have a downtown precinct. Tell us how that's going. And is that living up to the expectation that you had hoped?
I'm not hearing anything bad. It's mostly still positive. The officers seem to like working down there. I see them personally myself when I go out during the day. I'll go through downtown to see what's going on, not to snoopavise, but basically see what's going on. And
what was that term again?
Snoopavise. I just made it like snoopervision, but snoopavise, yeah. But they're out there. They're moving around. I haven't really heard a lot of complaints, and I've asked actually business owners and people involved in the banks downtown to kind of keep me apprised if they see something that doesn't look right, or if they're not happy with what's going on. And I've received no complaints. So far, so good.
How are the downtown bars doing? We've had several stories in the newspaper where we've covered the License Commission, and it seems like it's the same one or two bars time and time again that aren't holding up their end of the bargain. How's the bar situation downtown?
Well, I mean, I think it could be better. I know that one of the incidents that stood out to me was when I first took over, there was a fight inside one of the bars again. I'm not going to mention which one. And the person inside the bar was armed and legally had a firearm, but still had it in a bar. Was under the influence, which is a reason for him to lose his permit, which whether we end up doing that. But the gun fell out during a fight inside the bar, and we know that there were several underage UMass Lowell kids in that bar. So my fear is, not only the police officer, but as a parent, that God forbid, one of these kids ever get accidentally shot downtown, underage in a bar, or even of age. It'll be it would hurt us. It would hurt the
What
school.
time is last call in the Lowell bars?
I think it's 1:45.
It's
Still
quarter to two, right? That's late. I mean, that's almost the middle of the night. What time is the last call in some of the bars of the big suburban communities?
I know that they keep changing. I know some have midnight, some have 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I know that years ago when I was a young cop on midnights, a lot of the people from the outer areas would come into
Would come in
downtown
because
Lowell because they
it
had
drinks
another
them
hour to
more.
drink, right?
Right.
And that's usually when the trouble would start because they've already been drinking somewhere else and they come downtown Lowell. And interesting is, I'm not trying to hurt anybody financially here. As far as I know, they're trying to run a business.
We know that. Yep.
Yeah, and actually we're trying to play ball. We're actually going to run a class after the holidays to show the bar owners what they should be looking for. You know, kind of like an olive branch extent. We don't want to ruin someone's livelihood here, obviously, but I feel we have a job to do down there. And everything that happens downtown stems from the bars from my seat, where I sit. So that's why we're kind of putting a little bit of a push on.
If you had your druthers, would you roll back that last call to something that's more reasonable,
Absolutely.
that doesn't give folks who are probably already 3 sheets to the wind a chance to get even more drunk?
Well,
And what
I would
be an
definitely roll it
appropriate
back. I would say like 12 or 12:30, because what we're seeing a lot of is, just because we hire people down there every weekend, and there's officers downtown all the time, and they tell me, and I've seen it again when I was a captain, I'd take the detail or whatever, that a lot of people don't go downtown until like 11 o'clock. You'll have a group of people that come in from like 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, have dinner, a couple of drinks, and they go home. Then it slows down a little bit, and then all of a sudden, mostly the college kids, because they probably have a few drinks at their dorm or their house if they're living off campus, and then they say, oh, let's get downtown, and they get downtown at like 11 o'clock and stay till 1:45. And then we do our best to get them out of downtown as quick as possible, which is what we were doing the night of the shooting.
Yeah. Is it reasonable to pursue rolling back that last call, or would that just create,
I think, we've been in this business a long time.
Right.
And I know that this has been tried before.
Yeah.
And it gets political.
And it's been talked about.
It gets
It gets
political.
political. Yep.
And, everybody knows someone in the city. I always call Lowell big city, small town. And there's always, it never happened. So I would be a proponent of that. I think it would, curb a lot of our problems downtown.
Would you ever propose that? Aggressively get out there and try to push that back to say 12:15, 12:30?
Well, I think that we've had these discussions
before you would do that.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to do now.
Right.
So now we've been in the bar now for well over a year. Every weekend, tried different things, brought in the ABC, brought in other covers, and we're going to continue to do that. And now we're going to try to run this class, like I said, for the bar owners so they can know what to look for, so they know what a fake ID is and know how to look at it right away and know what it is. But I really get the feeling that they don't care.
Right.
And the board needs to know that.
The License Commission.
License Commission needs to know that. And it's just like, to me, it's an accident waiting to happen down there. We got to put some tough restrictions in place here to hold these people accountable, because I'm just afraid someone's going to get hurt. And we saw what happened downtown.
Right. The Sun had another story this week about a fellow who pleaded guilty on the first day of his trial, stemming from the fatal jet ski crash on the Merrimack River a couple summers ago. And I know that since you've become chief, that has been another priority of yours for some law and order on the Merrimack River during the summer months. And I think the Sun did another story about a boat that a marine patrol of the Lowell Police Department. So how did that go this most recent season? Did that have a significant impact?
I'll tell you, we've been very fortunate. A lot of positive comments about everything that we're doing, but the river was probably the biggest. The people that go out there and boat responsibly every weekend couldn't be happier, and they've made that known to us last summer and the previous summer. I was there when the first person, which is still an unsolved manslaughter case. Yeah, I was there earlier in that day, and I knew it was going to happen. It was the 4th of July. And I remember standing in Sheehy Park across from the old Burbeck's Ice Cream, and I'm watching this chaotic scene of people on jet skis just all over the place. And I predicted that day that something would happen, and sure enough, just as the environmental police detail came on duty, the accident happened and the people got to flee and all the confusion.
And that's still unresolved?
It's unresolved. And then Superintendent Bill Taylor and I had a conversation, and Bill had thought it was time to buy the boat, so he bought the boat just as he was leaving. And then we put a crew of people together, trained them, and it's very, very well sought after detail. So a lot of people like that job. But the people up there that use that boat river responsibly are thrilled. The boat club people, and So it's so far so good. It's going
Have
good.
you arrested people up there for?
I don't have the number of citations.
Yeah, no, I don't
mean,
expect you to, but
there's been a lot of.
Did you really try to put the,
Oh yeah, they were. I mean, we were at the boat ramp waiting for them. So instead of waiting for them to get into the river, we'd have a person assigned to the boat ramp, make sure they had all the registrations, the safety equipment they needed, and that helped a lot too, because once they pulled into that parking lot and saw there was a police officer at the boat ramp, they're going to have to answer all these questions, they would turn around and leave. So then after about a week of that, every season, then the normal people would come in and they'd form a relationship, and we'd lay down the laws or whatever, and it actually went pretty. It was another community policing effort for us, really what it kind of turned out to be.
Right. Now, we only have a minute or two left, so I want to touch base on this. You've been the chief, now the superintendent, for about a year. What do you consider, and the Sun did another story on that, what Aaron Curtis did that worked out well. What do you consider, under your leadership, the PD's biggest accomplishment during that first year? But then on the flip side of that, what is another issue that you'd like to address, or that you feel needs to be addressed, that you just haven't been able to get to yet?
I constantly hear, I think the biggest accomplishment, obviously, and it worked paid out for us, was getting a buy-in. Having the officers more involved, changing the mission statement, coming up with the core values, rebranding the police department as far as its mission statement, as far as the cruisers go, to give us more professional look. And I think that
referring to the new black and white cruisers?
The black and white cars,
right.
yeah. We put them out there. Again, it's a tough time to be a police officer right now, and I wanted to instill some pride in these officers. And I thought the black and white cars, we thought long and hard about it. We didn't want people to think we're going back to LAPD 1992 Rampart. I was afraid of that, because we get a good relationship here in the city, but I think that people shouldn't be judging us by the color of the cars we drive, especially in this day and age. So positive feedback again from our public, from the manager, from the city council, and the officers love them, because they look neater, cleaner, and a little less easy to pick out at
So
night.
just staying with that topic for a minute. So that was a conscious decision. That's not just something that happens. That's not the way the cruisers roll out of the Ford assembly line.
No.
Because they're all Ford Explorers, right?
Right.
I mean, you get to pick the design, and you specifically decided to go with the black and white as opposed to they were
doing the blue and white.
Right? Blue?
Yeah. Well, they were calling us Boston North, but whatever. That was another part of trying to rebrand the PD and make this PD. Nothing against any of my friends or the previous administrations,
Right.
but
No,
I wanted the officers in this to work here for me now to realize that this is their department and they own it, and I wanted to have some pride in it, and I think it's kind of worked out. Morale seems to be up. It's very positive things going on, hearing positive things from our public, and that's a tough thing to have in this day and age, but I'm proud of what they do out there, and I hope they continue to do it.
That's great. Yeah. What about on the flip side of that? There has to be an issue or something that's in your crowd that you haven't been able to get to, and that you'd like to get to in
It's
year
a good
two.
question. I mean, I set out some priorities right out of the gate, and I think the one thing that I'm still having a little bit of a struggle with is getting our message out there, the stories out there, not to be talk a lot about yourself or whatever like that. But Mayor Samaras is one of the people who really pushes this, that we need to get the positive stuff out there. So trying to find the right person in the organization to do that. I know we're doing stuff on Facebook now with the nightly reminder at 9 o'clock about locking your car. People absolutely love that one. So that's the kind of stuff that we have to do and get the positive stories out there. And like even, we're going to do our own TV show, Keeping Up with the Cops, so people get to see, who the men and women of this organization are and the positive things that they do. So that's my goal, one of my goals this year.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, Kelly, thank you for coming in.
Okay,
I
thank
appreciate
you very
it.
much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for tuning into this latest edition of Sunspot. We'll have a little layover now through the holidays, and I should be back sometime in probably the second week in January with another guest. Have a good night, everyone, and have a happy holiday season.
And that's all for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8, 95, and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku in the LTC News playlist, on Facebook at LTC Lowell, or on our YouTube page. We leave you now with more scenes of the City of Lights Parade. I'm your host, Krista Brown. Thanks for joining us.